MMA Heat podcast. Karyn, Bryant here with.
What's up, guys? Alan, Jouban as well.
All right, so it is, what's today, December 28th? Is that right? Something like that?
No, it's the holidays still, yeah.
It's the holidays. They all kind of blur together after Christmas and everything. So today we'll kind of wrap up some stuff for the year and maybe look ahead a little to next year. But how was your Christmas and everything? I mean, I know this year was obviously totally different for everybody. How was it, your Christmas?
Yeah, totally different, but it ended in a good way. The year was obviously a crazy year. For me personally, coming back and fighting, doing 2 desk jobs with the UFC at the end of the year, all within like a 6-month span, was like, that was my entire year. Other than that, for the entire year, I was injured and kind of waiting to do something. So that was fun to end the year with that. And then for Christmas, I didn't go home to Louisiana because of everything going on with COVID. I thought it was too risky to go see family. We stayed home, did a little bit of a Big Bear getaway, Christmas under the tree at home at our house in LA. And it was a simple, smaller one, but a fun Christmas. So we had a good one. How about you?
Yeah, no, same. I mean, we were here. Wade's folks are in town from Colorado. They've been here for since November, staying at a guest house down the street and stuff. So it was nice for them to be here. My mom was supposed to come, but then we realized, she lives in Florida and she's been alone. But the travel and with the numbers being so high here and also in Florida, we were like, well, maybe it's just not worth the risk. So basically, like 2 days before she was scheduled to come, I was like, yeah, it's all right if you just cancel. Like, it sucks because I haven't seen her forever, but it was like, yeah, it's probably the right thing to do. So, so it was 5 of us here. But yeah, I mean, we still, we made the most of it and had fun and stuff. But yeah, not quite what you'd expect. So.
Yeah, I think everybody's was a little. Even when we went to Big Bear, there wasn't any snow on the ground, and you couldn't go eat out at the restaurants. So Big Bear was a nice getaway, but it wasn't the same Big Bear, go play in the snow Christmas time vacation that we were used to.
Right.
It was still a nice getaway, but not the same.
But you did go inner tubing though, right? They made snow?
We went I sledding. Like after so many knee surgeries, I'm just like, I'm not risking it because I've never skied before. I tumbled down the hill one time, but for me to start learning how to ski or snowboard,
it's not worth it
with bad knees. I'm just like, I don't know if it's the time. I mean, now that we'll see. But we decided let's just play it safe, and I'll do the kid stuff with the family. We did some tubing, and so that was fun. And so like on the slopes, they have like the sprinkler system or whatever that they make the man-made snow, but everything else out in Big Bear had no snow. But today, for our viewers who are not in California, like it's pouring down rain today in LA. And all year, as far as I can remember, the entire year, as long as I've been in LA, about 15 years, this is the biggest kind of drought that we've had. I can only remember like 2 days of sprinkling, really. I don't really remember any full days of raining. This is the first day before the new year that we actually get rain all day.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I first moved to LA, it was 220 days without any rain. When I first moved here years and years ago.
I wonder what it was this time. But like I said, I know we had like a sprinkle a month ago and then another one a little while back. But I mean, we're talking about like just barely wetting the grass.
I know.
Not this.
But literally, I almost did a story last night because it is so rare here that it rains here that I literally was like, well, I should do a story that it's raining. And it's like, okay, it's lame, it's rain, but like we never get it here. And it was a huge, I don't know if we had like really loud lightning, like really, I mean, really loud thunder. Lightning doesn't have sound.
That loud thunder? I thought
but like really, 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 really to the point where all of us were like, oh crap, like there was one that caught us off guard. But yeah, I'm loving it. But
in the middle of the night last night?
Yeah, really late. Yeah.
I'm such an LA person now because I hear that rumble and I don't even think of thunderstorms because it never rains. And I thought it was an earthquake. And so I was like, is the bed moving? It's not moving, but what is that noise? We don't ever hear it. But that when earthquakes happen like it, to me, it always sounds like a motorcycle or something. Like when things are really moving, the house starts moving, you hear these weird noises. But it's pouring now. And it's got to be snow everywhere in Big Bear and Mammoth and everywhere else.
Yeah, now's the time you need to go back up there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so listen, it's interesting. A lot of people are coming out with their 2020 lists and their favorite moments. And before we were rolling, I was looking at, it is interesting because the UFC actually was able to crank out a lot of events this year. It's just that it was all kind of concentrated, right? So there was a bunch, like I worked at the beginning of the year, and then the last thing that I did was the Kevin Lee Charles Oliveira fight in March. That was the last one that I got to work. And so that was March 14th, right? Because before that, we had at the beginning of the year, the first fight of the year was Cowboy versus Connor. And so obviously we know this year we're getting Cowboy versus Dustin. But Cowboy versus Connor was the first one. Then we had Curtis Blades versus Junior Dos Santos. Then we had John Jones and Dominic Reyes. Then we had Anderson and Błachowicz, and we had Felder and Hooker. And, there were some good ones at the beginning of the year. We had the Joseph Benavidez and Figueiredo, which is one that I worked. That was the one in Norfolk when Figueiredo didn't make weight. So I guess I'll start with Figueiredo, Alan. Some people were calling him the fighter of the year and wondering if he was the fighter of the year. To me, I think actually the fighter of the year for me is probably Kevin Holland, only because he really put himself on the map and he won like 5 fights, and he was a guy who had talked a lot and we kind of knew he could have a year, but he to me made the most of the Apex situation, made the most of having a lot of eyeballs on him and taking the attention and doing the most with it in a positive way. I think Figueiredo did have a great year, and yes, he beat Joseph twice and then beat Perez and Brandon. Like, that's massive. But for me, missing the weight on the very first title fight with Joe, when that one was the one that was built up the most, for me, it's kind of hard to give him fighter of the year for that.
Yeah. So just to make sure I'm accurate, Figueiredo did win and fight 4 times this year.
Yeah.
Twice against Joseph and the last 2 at the end of the year.
I mean, I'm not trying to take away the fact that they were all incredible fights. The first one with Joe, we know there was the headbutt. The guy did incredible things, and he relocated the flyweights on the map. I mean, it was a massive year for him, but just to miss weight in a title fight, to me, kind of makes it where you can't be the fighter of the year.
Yeah, and so one more thing, I want to get my sources correct before I answer. The fighter of the year for Fighters Magazine or whatever it is that was announced, didn't Izzy get it? Is that what I saw online? I saw that Izzy,
he may have. I don't know.
I saw somewhere Izzy posted somewhere that he got fighter of the year. So I don't know if he just
I don't
made
know.
it or not. If that is true, I was very shocked by that. If it's true, Izzy to me came on the scene so heavy this year. Izzy fought twice, I believe. That not so, kind of a lackluster fight against Yoel Romero, obviously. Yeah. And then when he just became an icon in the game against that Paulo Costa win, where we just were like, wow, by him. And then being on the cover of the video game, and he's now a legitimate superstar in the UFC.
Got a Puma deal.
What's that?
He's got a Puma deal.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the Puma deal. He's got the cover of the game. The win over Paulo Costa was so supremely impressive. I mean, this was a bad man in Paulo Costa who was undefeated. And so that title fight legitified him as a superstar. But we're still talking about fight of the year. So he came up the most this year in my eyes. But again, like you said, I think Kevin Holland, fighter of the year, 5 fights, 5 wins, doing so many back-to-back, taking so many. Not only did he have 5 fights, but there was a lot of like, I'll take it last minute. I'll fill in against somebody. My opponent fell out. I'll take a last-minute replacement. And he never once wavered from that. He stayed with it. And you could have said against Kevin Holland, but he didn't really fight the most legitimate guys like the champs were fighting. The champs were fighting number 1 contenders. But the way that he ended the year with that knockout over Jacare on the ground, the way that he ended the year to me was an exclamation point on everything. Kevin Holland definitely would have my number 1. I would then give Figueiredo number 2. And then, I mean, honestly, I don't know that I would even put Izzy in the top 3. I'm sure if I thought hard, I could think of another fighter that had 3 or 4 legitimate wins, even though, like I said, everything – Izzy became a superstar in the sport, but I don't know if I would give him fighter of the year.
Yeah. Well, where do I want to start with this? So for the Kevin Holland thing. So the first fight he had in 2020 was in May. He beat Anthony Hernandez. Then he beat Joaquin Buckley. Then he beat Darren Stewart. Then he beat Charlie Ontiveros. Then he beat Jacare. Right.
The Charlie win was like, okay, whatever. He got fed 1 day notice welterweight.
Right.
But again, he came back strongly with his last win.
Yes, and Darren Stewart is very good.
Yeah.
But to me, yes, I agree with you. Like the Jacare thing was the exclamation point on it. For me to just and it was just he's a guy that made the most out of the year, and they weren't necessarily all huge names, but put himself on the map, made the impact, and now with punctuating it with Jacare, he can ask for so much more next year.
And they weren't all huge names.
Right.
But we're in 2020 where every fight is so difficult to get to the fight. I feel blessed, people, that I fought one time.
Yeah.
I look back at it and I go, so many things could have gone wrong with me getting injured, me re-injuring my knee, me getting COVID, my coach getting COVID, and any of those possibilities happening now to my opponent. Just to get to the fight is so difficult because every card, it seems like 4 or 5 fighters fall off the card. And so for Holland to fight that many times in 2020 without his coaches or him getting pulled from a card, or I can't remember, did Kevin Holland get COVID this year at some point?
I think I can't remember because there was one time when I think he might have tested positive once and then had to wait a couple weeks. Yeah.
I feel like there was some stuff like that. I know some of his opponents got COVID.
I think so.
But what I'm saying is that could have been such an issue. And then also there's fighters that have been talking about how they had COVID and they just never really got their energy back. They haven't been the same. And there's also fighters that said that they got COVID, but then they keep testing positive, even though they're not positive. They weren't even sick. And so there's so many things that could have happened. But yet 5 times in this crazy year, Kevin Holland went to fight week, made weight, fought, and won. And he did it, and then he capped off the year, like we said, with that incredible victory over Jacare. He's got to be the fight of the year. So much that goes into the fight week and making weight that he had to do, as well as win the fight. So it was a crazy year for him.
But to your point about Israel, I agree with you, though. Those were massive wins, and he raised his profile a lot this year, though. But I don't know if he's fighter of the year either. But he did raise his profile a lot. Now you have him in conversations with John Jones. If he's going to fight John Jones, you have talk about him being a potential champ fighting Jan Blachowicz. Like all of a sudden, we talk a lot more about Israel than we did before.
And he's now a legitimate numbers guy. Like this guy will now bring in. He's a superstar. And as he fights, we're gonna watch. I mean, he's a star in the sport. He's got the swagger. He's got the style. He's got the resume. He's backed it up, and he's undefeated. And he now, like you said, he's a Puma guy. He's on the face of the game. People are gonna start recognizing him, like the Conor McGregor. Like he's the face of the UFC now. So he's got that recognizable entity about him. And I'll say this. Let me give him credit on this because you're the one, I think, Karyn, that educated me on this at one point. When Izzy fights, I think he fought was it Fight Island when he fought Paulo Costa, right? Mm-hmm. To do that, he had to go there, and then he had to quarantine for 2 weeks, do the fight week thing, everything that I just said Kevin Holland had to do, but then to go back into his country, he had to quarantine for another 2 weeks before he could see his family or his people. I mean, and I think him and his entire team had to do that. They were all together, so they all stayed at the gym, slept at the gym, quarantined. I mean, so much goes into it, and I'm not trying to make it sound like, oh, it's such a tough sport. But, like, we see the performance, the 15 to 25-minute performance on fight night, not the fight week, not the weight cut, and then not even during this 2 weeks of quarantine COVID era that people are leaving their families, staying in these little dorms and quarantining themselves for 2 weeks just to be able to have the opportunity to fight and possibly get knocked out in 5 seconds. Like, there's so much that goes into it. And so when he did that huge leap of faith of going and quarantining and having that result on Fight Island with that victory, yes, he's such a star in the sport. So I just wanted to give him his credit where credit's due on that part.
Well, yeah, and you make a good point. I mean, all of you deserve credit for even making it to a fight. I 100% agree. The fact that, obviously we go through all that testing and stuff, but the fact that you have to try to find a way to train safely and make it to the fight. And, I mean, that really is something we should give a lot of credit to, right? Because we got great fights this year, too. Like, you could have just had half-ass fights, and people would have been like, well, I get it. Like, he couldn't really train, and they couldn't really this, and you could have had people gassing out halfway through round 1, or round 2. Like, people actually still committed and went really hard. I mean, I will say, at the end of the year, it does kind of make you think about, you're just talking, it's not a team sport, but obviously there's teams that go into it for you. But there really is a lot of credit that should be given to the fighters as individuals, as people who are able to continue to push themselves, to find a goal to set for themselves, even if you didn't know you could fight at all this year. Think about all the fighters spread out all over Europe or whatever who never even got a fight at all, or we're supposed to fight and then got sick, or we're supposed to fight and then the event got canceled. I mean, I just remember even at the beginning of the year in March being in Brazil for that and being like, what do you mean I can't go to London? What do you mean I can't go to London? Like, what do you mean? Like, I was so looking forward to that, and it was going to be the best trip ever. Had gone there the year before. Like, and now looking back, I was like, oh, isn't that cute how upset I was I didn't get to go to London. Like, isn't that cute? And then we were all home for 200 and something days after or whatever. So I guess my long story short on that is just I give all the fighters a lot of credit for that, being able to push through and to still show up and put on like great fights for us. But yeah, so Deiveson did put the flyweights back on the map and all that. Great year for him. But yeah, I think Kevin's the guy.
Kevin's the guy. And to add to what you said, the UFC was able to. I mean, you look. Most of our viewers, and I'm sure you too, Karyn, saw that video that Dana White posted recently about the UFC. And I got to tell you, that was a very strong video. I mean, that was a strong, powerful video from Dana, which in some ways made me very proud. In some ways, I go, wow, I was kind of shocked that he kind of called out some of these people. And that
you were shocked? That's what he does all the time, bro.
Right. Well, like the way that they cut it, where they put the face of the journalist and it's like in black and white. I was like, duh, these are like everyday people. We know these people.
I know that dude, right? Exactly.
Right, but they were like getting called out, and but my credit is what I'm getting at is I'm crediting Dana White, because that video, it was kind of like some movie, like when the early days of the quarantine were happening, and Dana White was standing there saying, I'm putting on the fights, and he took a lot of backlash. And a lot of fighters and people with the UFC were also kind of like, I don't know if this is right, but I want to work and I want to make money. And if our general is saying we're going to go, then like we're going to back them. But a lot of us were kind of on the edge. Like, is this going to be a good or bad thing? And for him to take that leap of faith and push forward and get the fights going, and they were in Florida for a while and bouncing around. We were like, where's it going to be? In Tashi Palace, and guessing, got the fights going for a couple of events, did the one in Brazil that you went to as well, and then the lockdown, everything at the Apex Center, and to, like you said, to end a year where we didn't have any fights for a while, and the end of the year, and I think there was a stat recently where this year was in the top 3 or 4 most fights in the entire year that we've had. It was like 46 fights or something this year. It's just incredible. It's incredible, and the UFC showed that we could be a well-oiled machine and lead the charge, and all the other sports kind of followed. So for all of us to be a part of that, people that work for the UFC, fight for the UFC, the fans, it was a special thing. But I commend Dana. I mean, I think that's kind of why he put that video out there. I think there was definitely a part of him that was pissed off at the haters, and he wanted to kind of, shove that back in their face. But there was also a part of him that he was very proud. I mean, if you're Dana White, you're looking at the year and you go, holy crap, I remember getting the phone call, and I remember making this decision, and I remember taking this leap of faith that could have gone so wrong, and it went so right, and they made all the fighters and workers happy, and all the investors in the UFC. I mean, that's the main thing on his mind, probably, right? $4.2 billion company say, I got all these investors, I gotta make my quota, and he was able to do it. So, boss of the year, Dana White. He gets it every year, but he definitely gets it this year. I mean, it was by a landslide.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's incredible that we were so many of us able to stay employed. We're very lucky, very fortunate. And, luckily I was able to tell him that in person, but I think all of us tell him that every day you could see how the excitement we all have when we're going to work. You know what I mean? We know we're lucky and blessed to have the work opportunities. And that again, that kind of cycles back to my point about the fighters who really, I feel like, took the most of it. And what was that stat that, the Apex became the busiest sports arena in the world this year, or whatever. and that, So, very fortunate, and I know, because I'm not going to say that at the beginning, too, with the Tachi Palace and those kind of things. And when you started to hear how bad it was, you're like, Yeah, I don't know. Is that a good idea? I don't know. I don't know if it's a good idea. You know what I mean? But then obviously we know, you and I know how many redundancies and all the protocol and everything, for us to be able to work. And yeah, we're fortunate. So hopefully, I don't know what 2021 will bring in terms of when the world will quote unquote go back to normal, or how often we'll still be just doing. I think the Vegas thing is going to be the situation for a while. I think so, but I am curious what your knockout of the year was. There were some good ones.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a bit easy. It's Buckley. I mean, it's you see special knockouts now and then, and I say this all the time, but I'm going to repeat myself. This was a special knockout, but it had this special reaction from the opponent. It's got to have two things. The guy can't fall down and then jump back up, and it was a flash knockout. That knockout, the way that he landed, a new move. New moves are so far and in between, a few in between now, because MMA's been around for so long now. There's not guys jumping off the cage anymore for the first time. We've seen everything: spinning back heel kicks, twister submissions. There's not a lot of new, innovative, creative moves that you could do once the sport has been around for 25 or so years. But we haven't seen that before. Somebody catching a kick, going back to that spinning kick. And the way that he knocked out his opponent, I mean, to be out on the feet and to land so hard, it was just a knockout for the ages. And I know that he became somewhat of a superstar in the sport because of that one knockout. And I know that I heard that Dana White gave him a bit of like a $200,000 bonus for that kick. Yeah. So he definitely gets my knockout of the year.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. That is Joaquin Buckley over Impa Kasanganay. That was on Fight Island. I was working that show, so I got to, that this is one that, I won't really forget, because we were all just like, what? Yeah. And I was sitting there with Joaquin for our post-fight interview, and that's when Dana came over, and I think it was like the ESPN MMA account or something had put it out. And it was great because I just got to be a little fly on the wall and watch him have this whole conversation with Dana. And Dana was, of course, like, holy shit, bro, and and all this stuff. And Joaquin was just, and like, oh my God, it's like, it's Dana, it's the boss man. And wow. And he's psyched about something I did. And you could just see that it was such a big deal for Joaquin, not only to land that kick and do all that, but then to have that moment with Dana and to have Dana coming over and just be like, bro, you just blew my mind and my whole phone is blowing up. And yeah, to your point, he's like, everybody's telling me I need to just give you every single bonus that came in tonight, or all of them. He's like, my phone is blowing up. And, and think about that. Yeah, Dana's all the way over in Fight Island, and he's saying everybody's blowing up his phone. Like, what did I just see? So yeah, to me, it's not a question at all. It's definitely Joaquin. But I will say that I loved Cody Garbrandt's knockout of Rafael Assunção, just because of the ferocity of it and the oh really, bam, the speed, the angle, it's almost like a fadeaway even. It's a walk, that one to me is probably my second favorite.
You got a number 3?
I don't know. It's really pretty. And also we hadn't seen Cody in a while. There was a lot to it. You know what I mean? That was nice.
You took the words out of my mouth. That was definitely my second favorite knockout. The ferocity of the punch, the impact, the way that it landed, it was just nasty. To go back to the Joaquin thing, I love that story about Dana talking to him. It's telling him bro, that was I had that same experience a couple of times, but my last fight when Dana ran and grabbed me after the fight, and I couldn't even see out of one eye, and I think I was about to start crying, and then he pulled me, so I was trying to hold the emotions in, but he was just doing the Dana thing. That was a sick fight, this and that, dude. You're a fucking stud. You're a stud, and that is the most gratifying thing in the world, because not only is it it's the boss man, but Dana White's become his own little brand celebrity entity. It's Dana White. It's the guy that you see talking all the time, and for me, I don't always talk to Dana. I've probably had 15 conversations in person with Dana White since I've been in the UFC. It's only maybe twice a year I'll see him or catch him, or only a couple of times he'll come to you after a fight. So if he comes to you after a fight, gets out of his seat and runs over to you and tells you something, it's just the most exciting thing in the world and gratifying because, you know, as anything, you get compliments in life from your supporters, from your fans, from your family. But when your peers or your most critic, your biggest critics, your boss, when they compliment you, that's when it means the most. When your peers and your boss does it. So that was, I'm sure, a very special moment for Joaquin. Cody Garbrandt, definitely number 2. Nasty. You know what my number 3 is? Talking to you right now, Karyn. And yes, this was this year, 2020. Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou on that Conor card when Conor knocked out Francis Ngannou.
With Cowboy, right?
Francis Ngannou knocked out other big dude.
He didn't fight Curtis on that one, did he? No.
No. That like 20-second knockout of
Jairzinho.
Rosenstruck. Rosenstruck. Yes, that was this year. That wasn't that the co-main on the Conor card.
I think so. Hold on, let me double check.
I feel like it was
here
on that card
because I want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was that same night. But that was, people kind of forgot about that one because it happened so quickly, and we kind of expect that out of Francis. And
yeah, Jairzinho. That was actually in May, so that was at UFC 249. So that was when that was the Tony versus Gaethje interim fight.
Oh, that's what fight that was?
Yeah, so that the fight card on at UFC 249 was that was one of the ones in Jacksonville. But that's when Gaethje beat Tony, Cejudo beat Dominic Cruz, Francis beat Jairzinho, Calvin Kattar beat Jeremy Stevens, and Greg Hardy beat Yorgan De Castro.
Oh, that was another big knockout, right?
And that was when Pettis beat Cerrone, too, same card.
Right. Calvin Kattar beating Jeremy Stevens. Didn't he hit him with like a sneaky overhand elbow and knock him out?
Yeah, it was elbows in the second round. But yeah, you're right. Francis beat Jairzinho in 20 seconds.
That was a crazy knockout. I just remember all of us standing up, losing our mind. Rosenstruck I believe he had just come off of that victory knockout over Alistair Overeem. Right. I believe that was the fight before, and then he stepped up and fought Francis, and we were like the two hardest hitters. Up until then, too, Rosenstruck had been knocking everybody out with jabs. Yeah. You know, he got pieced up a little bit by Overeem, but he was hitting people with jabs and putting them on the mat and finishing them. And he had like a K1 background, I believe, and crazy power. Francis came in there like a wild animal and was swinging wildly. But when he just was able to shut off the lights, and then he hit him one or two more times, and he just left them kind of dangling against the cage, everybody was like, Francis is the scariest person on earth. I don't care who has the belt. Francis is the scariest human on the face of the earth right now. So that was a big knockout for me. I'd give him my number 3 or 4.
Yeah, and anytime, I love watching Francis fight. Like, that's the one thing I will say about this year for all the Kevin Hollands that are busy. It sucks that like somebody like Francis only fought once, and you only fought once. There's only people that fought once or like not at all, or like we barely got to see Wonder Boy. He squeaked it in at the end of the year. He hadn't even fought since December of 2019. Like, so that's the one thing that I do feel like for a lot of these people that were able to put themselves on the map, there are some of these people I'm like, where's so and so? Like, what happened to where's whatever. But yeah, that's a good one. I'll give you that. The fight of the year thing is so hard for me because I really did love that Deiveson and Brandon Moreno fight. But then when you do go back and you start looking, like, I think I was maybe more like, holy crap, when Zhang, Weili and Joanna were fighting. Like, that fight was just insane. Just insane. So looking back, when I'm trying to think of the ones that impacted me the most, it might have been that one and the Deiveson fight where there was just the most like drama and oh my god, like I don't know, those were the ones and interestingly enough that they happened to be in title fights too. Yeah.
So those are my 2 top fights of the year. It's hard for me to distinguish against which one is deservingly get number 1. Yeah. You can't really be mad at either way that it went. It went to Joanna and Weili. And looking back, like you said, I remember going nuts. I was at I was at Michael Jai White's house.
Nice.
Michael Jai White's house with a big group of people, and we were just losing our mind watching this fight. I watched the Moreno Figueiredo fight at a buddy's house. It was just me and him, and we were losing our mind. Right. But it wasn't 20 people like the other fight. But I remember both fights having that back and forth, both people taking damage.
Yeah.
Both times being like, wow, how are they not knocked out and everything? So damage plays a big part. And I remember Joanna Jędrzejczyk, if the fans remember, having that huge hematoma on her head that started in the second and third. And as it kept getting hit, it became this huge thing. And we couldn't take our eyes off of it. And then Weili Zhang being the most busted up we've ever seen her in the face. So, like, for me, that's just like like when you have blood and damage and people are fighting through that, not just like I could take a good punch, but they're fighting through damage, harder to see, harder to do things, swelling. That always to me impacts stuff. And so that fight might have had a little more damage in the Figueiredo fight. So I'm fine with it. But I'll give you an honorable mention, Karyn. This was not a title fight, but I believe it was a 5-round fight, and that was Dustin Poirier versus Hooker. I remember us doing this show after that fight, and I could not say enough about how much of a high-level fight that was. And that fight had a lot of oohs and ahs and back and forth. It wasn't quite the fight of the year, and the belt wasn't on the line like the other two fights we just spoke about. But when it came to high-level fighting, fight IQ, and guys that are just willing to say, like, I'm going to sacrifice everything in my being to win this fight, I was blown away. I was just blown away that these guys, the way that they would box and roll and stay in the pocket and take each other down and come back up and scramble and punch off the break. It wasn't messy. It was like, this is high level current MMA. This is the high percentage things that work right now. And and they both stuck with it the entire 5 rounds. And that was such a beautiful fight by both men.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And the thing, too, about Zhang Weili and Joanna was, while all of that drama was going on and while they were busted up, they were still so technical and good. Like, it still was, you know what I mean, just an incredible fight between, two incredible athletes. But then, there is that part, and I don't think we can separate it. The fact that it was also women and the lightest weight class we had, and they were just absolutely kicking ass. Like, so it's almost like in sociology, there's the Gestalt approach, Alan, where the sum is greater. I mean, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? Meaning, the fight with Joanna and Zhang Weili, it's incredible. But if you take all these little things and separate it, like, it's even just more than that, right? But it is made greater by the fact that it was 2 women. I'm sorry, it was, because I think that made it even more like, holy crap, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, because there is that prejudice that girls can't do what guys can do. And so to see champion versus former champion, really incredibly high level technically, and they're showing grit, and they're showing, like, they literally, for those who watch the MMA Heat, it's heart, endurance, aggression, technique. That's what H.E.A.T stands for, and they showed every single one of it, all 5 rounds. Like, to me, that's the thing, is it just encapsulated sort of everything we want about a fight, right? And the fact that, like, Joanna is such a tough, badass girl beforehand, and Zhang Weili is proving herself in her defense against this. Like, there just was all these stories that go into it to make it that much more impactful. And then the fight itself was also actually bananas. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, thinking back as you were saying this, watching the fight, that made it also, I got to tip my hat to maybe give them the nod for the fight of the year, was I love the fact that both of these women, it's like if you took a wind-up car and you roll it back and then it zooms forward, that's how the fight was. Both women would engage, take a step back, and then they would engage again. Bop, 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 bop. Circle. Bop, 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 bop. Circle. They both kept coming forward. It wasn't like one person's winning, one person's losing. They both had their momentum. Yeah. But they continued to just, like, meet in the middle of the octagon, and like, Joanna, like, she makes her noises, and both of them. Weili, she also is another one that became a star in the UFC as well this year from that one fight. You know, we don't see as much about her because she's from China,
Right.
and her English isn't that great, but she cracked the barrier of showing some personality this year.
Yeah.
She showed a little personality. She had her moments where she would say one or two words in English. She put on a fight of the year. And she's a massive star in China, and a much bigger star than the girl that we didn't really know who. She fought my teammate Danielle a couple of years ago, you know, and we didn't know who she was. Oh, she's like 19-1 or something, whatever her record is, and she's, you know, a tough girl. And now she's this superstar in the sport. So credit to her. But those two fights for sure. Both of them, by the way, Karyn, like you said, the two lightest weight classes in the UFC for the men's and women's weight divisions.
Yeah, which is really, I think, something that we needed too. You know, the women's division doesn't have any issues. Everybody kind of calls the strawweights the marquee division for the women. But yeah, you know, Deiveson definitely had an uphill battle. And I mean, we have a superstar in Brandon Moreno too, McLovin, Mexican McLovin. I love that kid. You know, we used to see him a lot doing UFC now, UFC Ahora. But he's a superstar too. And if anything, yeah, Deiveson, I think probably made the UFC go, oh, okay, cool. Like, we actually do have a marketable guy and a sellable guy, and because he is a badass and he does knock people out. And even in a fight where he didn't knock him out, you know, he and Brandon had such a great fight. And then they're like, oh, wow, we have the potential for that rematch. We have, you know, these other guys now, you know, coming up. So, yeah, I think it was an important year, and Deiveson did a lot for his division and for that. But, yeah, to me, I think I'm going to give it to the women because that was dope.
I'll give them a tad bit of a nod for that one. It was great. From what I said, them just going forward in the middle of the entire time, and the damage. I got to say one last thing on Deiveson. Yes, he was the right person for the division at the right time. The division was spoken of maybe getting rid of it. He comes in, and even though, I don't know, everybody might have different viewpoints on Figueiredo right now, but I now see him a lot more. Like, as at first I was like, oh, this guy didn't make weight, and he headbutted someone. And then now that the UFC's been showing more story on him, you know, and he goes and visits his father and visits his family, and I'm like, oh, he's a regular dude too. But what I'm getting at is he has a great bad guy role. Something about his look, his demeanor, his hair. He's a flashy dresser, which for some reason it helps. I love that he comes in with a bunch of expensive clothes on, and he goes and blows a bunch of cash on a new suit after every fight. And he won't take a step back in a fight. If you hit him hard, he'll come forward. It helps the division. He's marketable. He has this almost like dark horse, dark knight kind of bad guy role that he brings, and it's great for the division. And so it makes you wonder, man, what would have happened if our former flyweight champion, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, would have fought?
Would have been great.
That would be a crazy fight to see what would happen.
That would have been an incredible fight. Oh, wow. Maybe one day they'll get the crossovers. Also, I'm just excited because it's pouring again now, and it's like it's such a goofy thing to get excited about, but like we never have weather here. Don't
ever have it.
I'm like, wow. I feel like anyway. But yes, those are good points. Yeah, Deiveson is. I think partly too. It is. I mean, the nickname is the God of War, and he does. He's got the vibe. He's got the look, and he does have, some star power to make you care, which is a really good thing. I'm curious, Alan, if on the other side of all the stuff that we're talking about, the good stuff, you know, if there was like your heartbreak of the year, or was there anything, you know, sad to you out of the year that you're just sort of like, man, you know, like. I guess for me, it would have been some of the fights that fell apart that we didn't get to see, I guess. But now, like, looking back, I'm like, I can't think of one specifically where I was like, oh, I can't believe that one got canceled. But I don't know. For me, it's just it'll be interesting to see where guys like Charles Oliveira is next year, right? And on the flip side of, like, what happens with Tony. Maybe 2020... with all the isolation, like Tony's a lone wolf kind of guy anyway, but maybe this year was harder for somebody like Tony. You know, like we do see. There's one thing I'm happy to see, that people are more forthcoming with talking about, having a hard time and mental struggles and things like that. I think that's important for, a lot of people to be able to communicate that. Because, it was a really hard year for a lot of people. And it'll just be interesting to see what happens when people can go back to like having their teams and training and doing things the normal way again. Like who found out they were better this year alone, and who found out they really needed other people more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and who maybe likes fighting without a crowd, and who needs to have that crowd. It'll be interesting to see when things open up. But when you with your first initial question of like disappointments or heartbreaks or however you want to say it, and I got 3 of them popped up, and I don't say this in terms of like, oh, that dude lost. I think of it in terms of like, maybe I had some emotion in that fight, and so I was heartbroken when that fight fell apart or that person lost, or we didn't get to see what we thought. And the first thing that came to mind was Joseph Benavidez, the first fight. Yeah. I mean, there was such a build-up for him to finally get that last shot. This is his last title opportunity. And then the way that he got knocked out and everything, again, he got a second opportunity. It didn't go any better. So tough year for him. But it wasn't just like, I'm not dwelling on his loss. It was just more the emotions behind it, because I really wanted to see him do well, and he's so cool, and Megan Olivi's so cool, so I was kind of rooting for them. But like we said, we got a new star in the sport with Deiveson. The other one, Conor McGregor Cowboy. I mean, that fight that they went back and forth for so long, where Cowboy would post pictures with a Budweiser next to a proper 12 whiskey, and the fight actually got made. And you think back to that initial press conference where like Cowboy was talking to Conor McGregor about like, you got a big task ahead of you with RDA, and how long they'd kind of been jawing back and forth. And Cowboy was finally getting that big opportunity, the big payday fight, the big one that, like, even though Cowboy hadn't achieved the belt yet, he's getting the big Conor McGregor fight, and it just wasn't his night. And not only was it not his night, but the Stephen A. Smith, the backlash from the media, how hard it was on Cowboy, I just felt horrible. It made me think, wow, Conor is a legitimate beast at 170. But damn, this was like the worst night possible for Cowboy. And now he's got to sit there and go through all the media stuff of it. And then lastly, I would say the fight that never took place, Karyn. The fight that we probably know what would have happened now, but we still wanted to see it so bad when we wanted to see Khabib fight Tony Ferguson. Yeah. Like, the fight that was made almost 4 or 5 times never happened. And looking in retrospect now, Khabib probably would have taken him down a lot of times. But you just never know, because style makes fights. Styles make fights. And timing makes fights. And when Tony was on a roll, Tony was on a roll. And people would take him down, but he would find a way to cut him with an elbow or submit him or scramble out. And he just had a couple, not great fights. And some people might say he got exposed, but it also just might be timing and matchups and other things that happen. But for that fight to us fans never to have gotten to see that, and likely will never see it, it's kind of sad to think that how many times we almost saw it.
Agreed. That did suck. And I guess for me too, the disappointment of the year is the saying goodbye to people without a crowd. So saying goodbye to Anderson Silva. You and I were fortunate enough to work that one, and it was an incredible moment. And I remember, really all of us were so quiet in there watching him in the octagon after, and the moments that he had with Uriah, and we all felt it. We all, we were there, obviously, we know. But to me, that kind of stuff sucked, right? So obviously on somebody as big as an Anderson, but even on Fight Island, like Little Nog retired over there, and some of these people that are on some of their last fights, Shogun, for example, some of these guys that are winding up, and you're like, wow, man, that sucks. Like, they don't have a crowd here for their goodbye. Like, Anderson should have had a freaking arena full of people. Do you know what I mean? Like, think about how to hear "Ain't No Sunshine" one last time in a big arena and all that. Like, I guess that's for me. It's the moments that we didn't get that we were supposed to get. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff. Was just disappointing. Like, Anderson should have gotten a real freaking send-off.
Yeah, and all of these fights and all these knockouts and everything that we just mentioned that didn't have an arena full of people cheering that on.
Yeah.
to elevate it even more.
Right.
Yeah, we feel like we missed out on. I got to say, my one fight that I didn't mind fighting as a fighter because it just makes your job easier. Okay, I just go and I fight and then I leave. It takes other stressful elements away, but that's what makes sports fun. It makes having those elements. That's why they have cheerleaders and crowds and the bullhorns going off and fireworks and the stealth jets flying over for the Super Bowl and all those moments that make it so special and memorable, rather than just the game itself. And so you strip those things away for the athletes, the fighters. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna go do my job, but for making it like a memorable moment, like encapsulating that in time. Yeah, we didn't have that roaring crowd for so many of these epic fights and knockouts that we just discussed.
But I will say, it seems like, some people kind of prefer the no crowd thing because just for that reason, right? You don't have somebody yelling knees. You don't have somebody booing when you're wrestling. You don't have somebody, just yelling nonsense. But I will say, like, for a Joaquin, for these people, like, you just did something sick. You used to be on the lookout in the crowd, and there's Anthony Kiedis being like, "My man," and like, or The Rock is there, like high-fiving you after your fight, and like that's incredible. And I feel like, that you guys got gypped of those moments, or even looking out and seeing your son there, or looking out and seeing your dad or your mom, like that kind of stuff. Is tough, and for people who became champions or whatever, and like same thing, like Deiveson had all these incredible fights, and we all celebrated him, but it's like there's 10 people there for his party after, like, you know what I mean? You're sort of like, it's cool, your dream came true, but damn, that sucks that it came true when nobody got to be here with you for it. I don't know.
Right. The one positive side to this subject that I'll end it on is, what's fun with the no crowd was seeing all these verbal communications during the year that, like, it got stronger as the year played out. Like, at first we were like, oh, you can really hear the sound of the crack, or the punch when it lands. We were like, wow, you can hear it differently. And then it became the next couple of shows, the commentators are like, wow, you have to kind of really talk quieter,
right?
Because they can hear you.
They can hear you.
And you don't want to sound disrespectful, or you don't want to give the guys keys to victory. Like, he should really be trying to underhook right now, and the guys are underhooking. And then you can hear the corners having conversations with their fighters. And then it became fighter talking to fighter. By the end of the year, people were like making a mockery of it. They're like talking to the corners, and they're talking to Michael Bisping while he's calling.
I know, and they're flexing while they're.
And then they're like, I mean, it just became like a spectacle. Like, it's so quiet. What can we do to kind of disrupt the norm? And it became a fun thing, though. And I'll be curious to see if these antics kind of uphold when crowds are back. If we still see such verbal communications amongst everybody inside of there when it's a little noisier.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of funny, though, because DC and Mike have kind of loud voices anyway, but it is funny when you would hear somebody, you could see somebody fight, and like in the middle of the fight, like talking back to them or whatever. It was kind of funny.
What's crazy is on my fight, I had that kind of one moment where Kenny Johnson yelled out 15 seconds, and I was like, 15, but I never heard a single word from the commentary booth, from Joe Rogan, John Anik, DC. I never heard a single thing. So to me, it was funny when you see these fights and they're like talking back to Bisping, and I'm like, man, how did they hear that? I didn't hear anything. But you pick up different voices in your head. It's a weird thing how sometimes certain cornermen you hear every word, and other cornermen you can't distinguish about it. And so I didn't pick up any commentary.
Well, you need to print that. That needs to be your signature shirt. Like 15 seconds, let's go. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But that was pretty great. Well, we were saying before we recorded, as 2021 comes around, like, we don't know what we're going to do here. We might keep going with this podcast. We might kind of change it up into some different forms and stuff like that. I think there's one thing that, just going forward, like, I feel like people are, I don't know if you're a resolution person anyway. I know you're very goal driven and you always have kind of your visions and your, what you want to achieve. I'm not necessarily overly I don't necessarily say like, oh, this year I'm going to do more of this and more of that. Like, kind of in general, I'll make slight resolutions, but not too much. But yeah, just so in general, like, so we might keep going and doing it this way. We might kind of break it up. We might do different things. And just so people know that, 2021, I feel like a lot of people are doing a lot of assessing of a lot of different things, right? This year, I mean, you do that at the beginning of a year anyway, but I feel like especially in 2020, people are trying to really figure stuff out.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see what happens going into it. We got a couple weeks to kind of figure that out. Yeah. I think you said the next fights are mid-January, sometime next year.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there and figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, cool. But we definitely obviously always appreciate people tuning into this. All the shows that we've ever done are on YouTube, on Karyn Bryant channel there. You can also find them at MMA.audio for the audio downloads. And we have MMAHeat.com as well. And so on Instagram, you can follow me at KBHeat. On Twitter, Karyn Bryant. You can follow our producer, Wade Eck, across the board on his different social media. And we want to know, like, your opinion, what your fight of the year and your knockout. And if there was somebody that really surprised you this year. Your favorite. I will say my runner-up on the knockout of the year, too, might also be Kevin Holland double dipping with that Jacare thing. Because now, like, in hindsight, that was like, what? And I guess also because it was Jacare. You were like, what?
The way that he did it, who it was, and from the ground. Yeah, it was just an odd one. I agree. That was a crazy one. If you guys want to follow us on social media, follow me as well. At Alan Jouban across all social media devices.
All right, I don't know if anybody heard that. That was just really loud thunder. Like, that just scared me here for a second.
No, I didn't get it here. I wonder if I'm going to hear it over here.
Oh, you might get it. Anyway, yes.
About 20 miles apart.
That's the perfect. God has spoken, Alan, and the show needs to wrap. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, folks. And we'll see you in 2021.
Take care, guys.